Thank you. Hi, everyone. Good evening. I'm Sara Varni. I'm the CMO at Twilio, the Chief Marketing Officer. And it's rare, actually, even though I'm a Chief Marketing Officer, to actually present on marketing. So I'm really excited to talk to you a little bit tonight about content. I think I was having this conversation over the course of the day about what content means to certain people and or content marketing, and people will often go first to SEO or blog or ebooks. And as a CMO, I actually think about it through the full course of the funnel. So I want to walk you through where I see opportunity at each stage of the funnel and point out some of my favorite examples over the course of the last 12 years. A little bit about my background and where I've picked up certain skills on the content marketing front. I actually started my career as an equities trader on the New York Stock Exchange. I don't know really what that has to do with content, but I did pick up some valuable life skills like having to compute tons of numbers very quickly, and also how to deal with any sort of person on the universe and any sort of level of swearing. So that's been very good for my life long term. I then was fortunate to get a job fairly early on at Salesforce. The company was about 6 years old at the time. Started on the AppExchange marketplace. How many people are familiar with the AppExchange? Oh, not too many. The AppExchange is Salesforce's app marketplace for add-ons to their products. And at the time, it was the wild, wild west of cloud software. The Apple App Store didn't even exist. So I was asking ISVs and developers to basically bet their livelihood on a platform that was not tested. So that was a great first challenge as a marketer. From there, so I learned ecosystem marketing as part of that. From there, I went to Desk.com, which was a small business product focused on contact center. And in that role, I really started to understand the SMB space, how to support a sales team with content, and how to think through that customer journey. From there, I worked on marketing for the Sales Cloud, which is Salesforce's primary product, and that was a whole nother ball of wax where I really had to learn not only how to market to SMBs, which is where Salesforce really got their start, but how also to market to an enterprise audience that may not have the same timeline in terms of purchasing, that may not have the same way of consuming content, and so that was another skill that I picked up. And then ultimately, I came to Twilio, where I was introduced to a whole new audience, which is developers. And as many of you may know, some of you might be developers in the audience. How many developers do I have in the room? A few? Okay, great. The way that developers consume content is much different than your traditional enterprise buyer. So with every piece of this, and it's not to say that I just focused on that one piece for every product. I kind of it's more to say I picked up this new kind of skill or audience with every role that I took on or encountered. But I will say, common across all of those, the common thread is that you need to earn the right to talk to your customers and prospects. You can't just walk in and start selling your product from the get-go. I remember at Salesforce, someone came to me at one point and said, "Oh, we've got this amazing ebook. It says 6 ways to transform your customer experience." And I said, "Oh, that sounds great." And then you turn the page and it said, "Buy Sales Cloud." It wasn't really, and right there you've lost the customer's trust. You've completely lost the ability to really build a relationship with them because you're not being very sly about what your ultimate motives are. I think second to that, you need to always question yourself, am I telling the audience something that they don't already know? I was working on a deck, I don't know, a month ago, 6 weeks ago, and it was something around mobile device explosion. And it's like, yeah, okay, everyone's on a mobile device, everyone's on their smartphone 5 hours a day or whatever the stat is. That's not new news. And so I think as a content marketer, you constantly have to be asking yourself, is this a novel concept? Is this something that they don't already know? Because otherwise, you're pretty much wasting that customer's time. And again, you're not earning the right to really talk to them. And then finally, I think you also have to think about, are you informing your audience in a memorable way? You could be telling them something they don't know, but it could still be super boring, right? So you want to make sure that the content that you build is compelling, that it's grounded in customer stories if you've got strong examples, that it's got real-world stats behind it, but that it's also fun, or that it's memorable, or that it touches on an emotion that's going to ultimately resonate with that buyer or the stress that they're going through in their particular role. I also think what's tricky as a content marketer is you've got to think about what's the right intersection of global relevance for the topics that are out there, and how does that align to your product suite and what's relevant within your own product lines. So if you think about things that are globally relevant, that are constantly in the news, you get things like Trump, or you get things like the MAX 8 airplanes, right? These are constantly in the news right now. But do they have anything to do with your product? Probably not. On the other front, you might have products that are high in terms of your company priorities, but are not necessarily super high on the global relevance. And so, when I think about the Twilio landscape, I could lay out a couple different, topics here and plot them out on this chart. And ultimately, I'm going to want to be in that upper right-hand corner. So here, and this is in line with my co-presenter, AI and ML, huge topics for us right now in this space. We have products to match that. This is a great place for my content marketing team to be playing, because not only is it relevant to our product lines and some of the products that we've recently announced, it also is globally relevant. So I challenge you all to think about what is that intersection of global relevance and product relevance for all of you in the room. And then, like I said in the beginning, I really think about this in the full context of the funnel. Some people think of content marketing as just that top layer, of just that awareness layer. And I think your job's not done there. You've only really just begun. And I want you all to be thinking about what is the content you need through that full customer journey. At the top, it's about just building awareness for your category. In the consideration phase, it's about building more awareness for your product. And then ultimately, especially in a B2B context, you want to push these prospects or these, it could be an existing customer, to a decision. You want to help them give the tools to either evaluate the product themselves or to sell it up the chain to their management structure or the people who are ultimately approving the budget. So at this point, I want to walk through a couple of examples at each phase of this journey where I really think that a company or an approach has been effective. So first, you see a lot of websites creeping up, I'd say in the last 2 to 3 years, that are very lightly branded by the company at hand, but they're really positioned as vehicles for thought leadership. How many people have seen CMO.com? This has been around for probably 4 or 5 years. This was created by Adobe. You can barely see, it's like, buy Adobe, very quietly there. They're not out front and center that this is their brand, but the idea here, it's not heavy on a product push. It's really heavy on positioning them as a thought leader in the marketing space and creating a home for marketers to go find all the information and resources they can, not just from Adobe, but from their peers and from thought leaders in the community. And this is a great way to get top of funnel interest and to also create a heart of marketing for Adobe that they can go and remarket and eventually push products when they get further down the funnel. But it also is a great brand building exercise for them to position themselves as really the authority for all types of CMO content. There's plenty of other examples of people who have done this. I think Zendesk has also done a great job with their Relate site. Again, it talks very little about customer service and is more about topics like empathy and how to essentially relate to customers in a B2B context. And I think they've done a great job of not only, again, building thought leadership in that space, but building a great brand for themselves in the contact center space. Another great way to do this is through video. And this is part of an ad series that Google Chrome ran about 2 years ago. I might cry during this commercial. I'm just a full disclaimer. But here you take something that is basically web tool add-ons and you make it emotional. You make it memorable. So let's go to this video. This is the highest degree of difficulty for my presentation. 1 second.
No, I'm fine. Can we do this again tomorrow?
Anytime.
I miss having my own room.
What do you think?
That's a little better.
A little better?
Yeah. This is my boyfriend, Jamie. I don't feel at home here. I feel homesick.
Maybe it's time to let it go. Maybe it's time for taking it slow.
Love you. Don't stay up too late, okay?
Hi, alligator.
See you later, alligator. In a wild crocodile.
In a wild crocodile. I remember that.
All right, so who knew Google Chrome could be so emotional, right? They do a great job there of showing all of their products in a really subtle way, and they also make you feel something about the brand. You feel connected. You can see that Google is delivering human connection, and I just think that's a really powerful ad that they pulled together there. There's a couple others. They're all tearjerkers. Let's go to the consideration phase. Now, here's where you get to talk about your product. This is where you can start to give more insight as to your features and capabilities. You can talk about the business value that your product will drive, and that normally takes a shape in a couple different forms. At Twilio, we have an interesting opportunity in the sense that we market a platform. Twilio is a communications platform. We deliver a number of APIs for everything from SMS to voice to video to even fax. The platform opportunities are very much endless. The challenge is it's sometimes hard to communicate what a platform can do. APIs aren't the easiest things to demo. And so as a result, we have to get creative about how we can demonstrate our products both to a technical buyer and a non-technical buyer. So at Twilio, we've thought about ways to build interactive pages on our website so that here, and I encourage you to go and check this page out on our site, you can go through a live experience calling in on this number, and dynamically, as you'll go through a IVR or a phone decision tree, the code here on the right will change. So you can actually see what's happening in the product at the same time. So I think thinking about how you can create an interactive demo experience has been highly successful in my experience, both at Twilio and at Salesforce. At Salesforce, we did a number of different product tours. We'll just let people click around without having to go through, setting up a full environment, but just to give a taste of how the product will work and really kind of get their hands on it. Second, I can't overstate the power of customer stories. I think it's critical early on as you're building your brand, as you're thinking about how to communicate your products, that you do it through the lens of your customers. And it's important that you get as wide a breadth of customer stories as you can, and you make sure that they're very hard-hitting, that you get, I would almost sacrifice brand name for more results and concrete metrics and stories. The stories are really what get people over the line and will be convinced that they need to come on this journey with you and your product. So here's an example of one that we built at Salesforce for T-Mobile.
I've never felt anything like what we have here at T-Mobile.
We're not afraid to try new things. We're not afraid to eliminate customer pain points.
We don't feel like the small player anymore.
We're the company that's built the brand around customers. Our B2B business has really followed a lot of the same paths as our B2C business. But man, it's showing that it really works there as well.
We're industry leaders. We're shaking things up. Salesforce does the same thing.
You don't want a customer to know that you're a series of different departments. They want to know that they're talking to T-Mobile. We're using Sales Cloud as a way to gather data and use it as a starting place for a marketing journey. We also have Salesforce deployed in our retail stores. When a business walks in and they make eye contact with one of our reps, a relationship is formed.
80% of our retail reps are now utilizing the Salesforce app on a daily basis.
We immediately saw a really significant increase in leads that were captured in retail and then successfully transferred to our direct sales team.
Given that we're a mobile company, being mobile is very important.
Salesforce Inbox allows us to bring everything together.
It's basically like I have a Salesforce assistant. It took a lot off my plate that I would have to manually track. It provides me all the background knowledge that I need to help better assist the customer.
Lightning is helping us drive that adoption and driving that perception that this is a selling tool.
Salesforce really helps me in not only attaining my quota, but actually exceeding my quota. I'll kind of just have a competition with myself. I'll be like, we'll see, Salesforce, we'll see.
Utilizing the Salesforce platform, our quote-to-cash process, we went from 120 clicks down to 7. That ROI is huge.
Our teams are in Trailhead all the time. Salesforce always has the latest and greatest releases coming out.
Last year they came out with Einstein.
I think AI can completely change the game, where instead of focusing on no's, we can focus simply on the people where we've already gotten signals that they're going to say yes.
Here's how we can not only help your business grow, but be more efficient.
Yeah, I think we found a formula that really works.
Other carriers, they're still chasing us, and they're not going to catch us because we're trailblazers here. And that culture of trailblazing is going to continue out forever.
Okay, so you see there, even though we were talking about the Salesforce product, the story is still 50 to 70% about T-Mobile and their transformation. And I think I wouldn't shy away from really leading with your customer story, how your product or service is transforming them, and then your product's going to shine through that anyway. So even though we're in that mid-funnel and I'm saying go ahead and talk about your product, make sure that the customer is leading the message and it's about their transformation, not yours. Okay, finally, the close section, and admittedly, the assets kind of get a little bit more boring as you move down the funnel once you go towards decision. The best part is in awareness. Maybe that's why content marketers only talk about the SEO and the fun stuff at the top. But it is a super critical step and something that shouldn't be downplayed. In fact, when I talk to a lot of my counterparts in marketing, normally the leaky part of the funnel is here when it comes to content. So one easy way to do this, and this is obviously super relevant in a B2B context. So if you are marketing directly to consumers, I apologize, this might not be as relevant, but providing ROI calculators. And part of this is for the edification of the person you've been engaging with the most, but sometimes this is their tool to actually sell your product up the chain. So they can see, all right, if I use this product, I'm going to increase conversion by X%, and now I'm going to go take it to my boss to justify the budget. You can build these on your own if you have a great biz ops team or a sales strategy team. You can also work with a number of different analysts who will help craft this for you together and take the inputs from your business and what you've seen across your customers to model out what the typical ROI could look like for your customers. And HubSpot is a great example of a company that does this well, in my opinion. Second, demos. I think any time you can get someone on the phone and seeing your product live in an assisted way is going to be a great way to move that deal down the line. It just goes without saying. I think that some people, especially if you're resource constrained, can stress out about the frequency of these demos. I think there's ways around this. I know when I worked on some of our teams that had a smaller sales engineering team, what we would do is have a recorded demo that was pretty much the same thing every week, and then we'd open it up for live Q&A. So instead of having to worry about getting that environment set up or making sure your slides are perfect every week, you've got it all ready to go, and because you're going to be showing basically the same thing pretty much every time, hopefully. And so then where the people can really get their questions answered can be at the end with just one person staffing that live. So those are some of my top examples by funnel. I also just want, this is probably very basic for most of you, but just some considerations by audience. Definitely internationally, you want to make sure that the way that you're delivering content is the way that audience wants to consume it. I know in Japan, for example, they want everything printed out. And so you need to make sure that whatever audience you're targeting, if you are a global marketing team, that you're matching that content to the right audience. Role, and this can take many forms and fashion. You want to make sure that the content that you're delivering delivers on the KPIs for that person in that role, obviously. So if you're a head of contact center, you want to make sure that you are helping the person see how your product can reduce call handle time. On the other side, you got to think about the level of attention this person has. So if you're trying to get the CEO of Daimler Chrysler to pay attention, sending an ebook is probably not going to be the way to go, right? And so I think you need to think about what level are you trying to reach in an organization, and what's the right type of content to get to them. For someone at that level, it's probably going to not be online content. It's going to be more an event presence. You can think about an asset to drive them to an event. If you have a state of marketing report, let's say, and you want to get a bunch of CMOs in the room to talk shop with their peers. But I think you need to think about what level are you trying to target and what is their likelihood to actually consume that content. Company size. This is something that I saw in the different different products that I covered over the years. For an SMB business, it's not unlikely that they can go cradle to grave all online without any interaction from a sales representative. As you start to move to the mid-market segment or up into enterprise, you need to think about what's that transfer of content from online to offline. How are you thinking about using content to drive people to events? And what's that mix of mediums versus thinking about a full online journey? And then finally, industry. This is something that I know is always hard to do out of the gates with limited resources, but as soon as you can, the more industry specific your content can be, the better it's going to land. So instead of talking about accounts and contacts, you might talk about doctors and patients. Those differences are really important in really reaching your customers and conveying to them that you understand their business. I also think there are a lot of new channel dynamics that we constantly need to be in front of. And this is why events like this are great, just to hear from peers and to talk about best practices or what you're seeing work or not work. Podcasts, we've seen a huge surge in podcasts, at least in the US, in terms of people using them to educate them on B2B topics. Over 40% of Americans now listen to a podcast at least once a month. Influencers, how many people saw the Fire Festival documentary? Maybe not, that's probably not, what not to do. But influencers are a thing. I'm sure all of us would, many of us in the room would raise our hand if we have bought something, I don't know, I personally I'd be raising my hand all day, about, buying something from someone that had recommended on Instagram. There's stuff all day. I'm in a way suitcase now because of Instagram. I've got, Rothy shoes, you name it. I'm like Instagram's dream. But there's lessons to be learned, from that. And, I think you need to think about who are the influencers in your industry. It might be a Kardashian, it might be a developer, it just depends on what you're selling and what your space is. But I think influencers absolutely need to be part of your strategy. Voice search, this is a new dynamic. Over 50%, keep me honest here, Tricia, 50% of searches in the near future will be activated by voice. And so you need to be getting ahead of that strategy and thinking about how is your organic strategy going to play in to this world where voice becomes a major driver of getting people to your content. And then finally, video narratives, back to Instagram. But I do think that this new concept of, not new concept, but a concept that Instagram's really taken from Snapchat and blown to a new degree in terms of stories and telling narratives is super powerful, we found in the B2B context. So now when we go to an event, like we're hosting one tomorrow here in Berlin for Twilio, small plug, please come. But we can do a whole day montage about what the event was like and tell a much more compelling story than we could, just posting a series of pictures. So I definitely see that being increasingly a part of our mix. And I just have one random graph that I thought was super interesting while I was preparing for this. You can see, Snapchat had the story concept for a long time. And this is both of their daily active users. When Instagram added stories to the mix of their product, you can see their daily active users just shooting through the roof. I thought that was really crazy. All right. So that's all I wanted to cover today. I wanted to give you the context of how I think about full content marketing, in the context of the funnel as a chief marketing officer. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have here or after, if you all stay around for drinks and food.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot for the talk.
Sure.
Guys, does anybody have a question?
Thank you for the speech. Could you explain a bit about the voice search that you just said?
Yeah, so, increasingly people, instead of just typing into their browser for, whatever they're looking for, they're going to be activating, they're going to say, Alexa, tell me about XYZ product. And so I think you need to be thinking about how you're engineering your search engine optimization to mirror that, because the way people ask for things over Alexa might be different than the way they actually type it into the browser. So that's where I think we need to be thinking. Next year. Get ready.
Hello. To the right here.
Hi.
Hi. As a startup, we don't have that much resources to create so much content. We need to focus on what works best, and we aim for reusability. Do you have anything on that? Can we actually reuse stuff from top of the funnel to the bottom? How would you go about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I have been in, and I'd say I'm very much in the situation right now at Twilio. We're a high growth company, so I can't be like, writers, go do this. That's not our situation either. And so I think you have to be smart about the assets that you build and think about chunking them out in a way that you don't just launch the asset and that's it. So if you were doing let's just go back to the state of marketing report, and you were to survey a bunch of marketers in your customer base and beyond, if you can get access around certain trends that they're seeing, instead of launching that book all at once, you would think about, all right, I'm going to launch it chapter by chapter, and then instead of just one piece, you might have a whole year of content that you can drip out over the months. So I think it's just being smart about how you can take a bigger asset and drive it into chunks, and then how can you take that to different channels. So you've got your state of marketing report, maybe it's an ebook. All right, well then you could have Instagram interviews next to that in stories that map every month to the topic that you're covering in chapter 1. Or you could think about blog posts that run alongside that are on those topics from thought leaders in the space. Just how do you get the most out of that theme, and then just get the most bang for your buck out of that asset.
Anybody else? Okay. Thanks so
Yeah,
much for
of course.
coming
Thank you.
and sharing with us.
You're not from me.